When I retired, I thought life would finally slow down. My wife had passed away 5 years earlier, and my only son, Michael, had grown distant. He was always busy with work, chasing promotions, barely calling to check on me. Still, I was proud of him. I believed he was doing his best to build a life for his family. But everything changed when my health took a slight dip. My back started hurting, and I needed a little help around the house. One afternoon, I called Michael and asked if he could drop by to fix a broken railing on the porch. He sighed, annoyed, and said, "Dad, you're useless without Mom. Why don't you just move into a nursing home? You'd be taken care of there." The words hit me harder than I expected. Useless? After everything I had done for him? I paid for his college, bought his first car, even helped with his down payment on that big house he now lived in. And now I was just useless? Still, I didn't argue. I just smiled through the phone and said, "All right, son, don't worry about it." That night, as I sat alone in the living room, surrounded by old photographs and memories, I made a decision. A quiet one. The kind of decision that changes everything. I called my lawyer the next morning. "Robert," I said, "it's time. I want to sell the house." Within a week, the house that had been my home for over 40 years was listed on the market. It sold faster than I expected, for $2.1 million. Michael had no idea. He never visited, so he didn't notice the "for sale" sign out front. When the deal closed, I withdrew a small amount of cash and transferred the rest into a private account Michael couldn't touch. Then, I made one more call to an old friend named Jack, a retired real estate developer I had once helped start his business decades ago. "Jack, I think it's time I take a little trip," I said with a chuckle. "Somewhere warm, maybe Florida." He laughed and said, "You've earned it, old man." I packed up my essentials, donated most of my belongings, and left a single envelope on the kitchen counter with Michael's name on it. Inside, I wrote, "You called me useless. I hope one day you understand what that word really means." And then, I was gone. 2 weeks later, my phone buzzed non-stop. Michael had found the house empty, the sign gone, and the money missing. He panicked, thinking I was lost or worse. But by then, I was sitting on a sunny porch overlooking the ocean, drinking coffee with my new neighbors, people who smiled, laughed, and valued conversation. For the first time in years, I felt alive. Then, on the third week, something happened. A knock on the door startled me. I opened it, and there was Michael, red-eyed, desperate, and trembling. "Dad, please," he said, voice cracking. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean what I said." I looked at him, silent, letting the moment hang heavy in the air. He fell to his knees right there on the porch, tears streaming down his face, and all I could do was whisper, "Now you understand, son. Family isn't about convenience. It's about respect." Michael knelt on the wooden porch, his hands trembling, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Dad, please. I didn't mean it. I was stressed. I was angry. You've got to believe me." I looked down at him, my heart a mix of anger, sadness, and something else. Pity. He was still my son, no matter how far he'd drifted. I sighed and stepped aside. "Come in, Michael." He hesitated before walking in, his eyes scanning the small beach house I now called home. It wasn't as big or fancy as the old family house, but it had warmth. It had peace. He sat on the couch looking lost, like a boy who'd finally realized the weight of his mistakes. I made us coffee, black, just the way he used to drink it when he'd visit during college days, when things were simpler. We sat in silence for a long time. The ocean waves outside filled the room with a calm rhythm. Finally, I broke the silence. "You know, Michael, I didn't sell that house out of anger. I sold it because I realized something. I'd spent my whole life working to give you comfort, but somewhere along the way, you stopped valuing people who made sacrifices for you." He looked down, guilt written all over his face. "I know, Dad," he said. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought putting Grandma in a home would be easier for everyone." I nodded slowly. "Easier for you, maybe. But life isn't about what's easy. It's about what's right." He didn't say anything, just stared at his hands. I leaned back, taking a deep breath. "You know, son, when your mother passed, I promised her I'd always try to keep this family together. I failed that promise when I let you drift away. But maybe there's still a chance to fix things." He looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. "There is, Dad. Please, let me make it right." I smiled faintly. "Maybe you can. But I'll be honest with you. I don't need an apology. I need change." He frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" I stood up and walked to the window, watching the sunlight hit the waves. "I'm giving away most of the money from the house." His eyes widened. "What? Dad, that's crazy. You earned that. You should keep it for yourself." I turned back toward him. "I've kept enough to live comfortably. The rest is going to something meaningful. Building homes for veterans and supporting nursing homes that actually care about their residents. You called me useless, Michael. Now I'll prove what usefulness truly means." He was speechless. For once he had no arguments, no anger, just shame and admiration mixed together. After a moment, he said softly, "Can I help? Can I be part of it?" I smiled. "That's the only reason I'm telling you. You want to make it right? Then learn to give. Learn to see people, not just money." He nodded, his eyes glassy. "I will, Dad. I swear I will." Over the next few weeks, Michael stayed with me. He fixed things around the house, cooked meals, even joined me when I visited the local shelter to help paint walls and deliver supplies. People there loved him. They saw the man he could be, the man I always hoped he'd become. One night, as we sat watching the sunset, he said quietly, "You know, Dad, when you called me useless that day, well, I guess I was worse. I was blind." I chuckled softly. "We all lose our way sometimes, son. What matters is whether we find our way back." He smiled, then looked serious. "You think Mom would be proud?" I felt a lump in my throat, but nodded. Yes, she would. She'd be proud of both of us. That night, he handed me a folded paper. It was a proposal, a plan to expand the Veteran Home Project, with him leading it full-time under a nonprofit he wanted to name after his mother. I read it silently, then looked at him. "This is good. Really good. Are you sure you're ready for this?" He nodded firmly. "I owe it to you, and to Grandma, and to Mom. I owe it to myself." Tears stung my eyes for the first time in years. I reached across the table and placed a hand on his. "Then let's do it together." In that moment, I realized the house, the money, the pain, it all led to this. The lesson wasn't about revenge, it was about rediscovery. A father finding his son again, and a son learning the true meaning of worth. Months later, our project became a success. Veterans moved into new homes, families reunited, and Michael found his purpose again. People would often ask why an old man and his son started such a foundation, and I'd always smile and say, because sometimes losing everything is the only way to remember what really matters. And as I'd watch Michael shaking hands, helping others, smiling with real gratitude, I knew one thing for certain. He'd never call anyone useless again. Days turned into weeks, and life slowly found a rhythm again. Michael and I would wake up early, walk along the beach, then spend hours planning new ideas for the foundation. He had changed. I could see it in the way he talked to people, the way he listened without interrupting, the way he smiled with genuine warmth. There was no trace of the arrogant, impatient man who once told me I was useless. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned gold, Michael turned to me and said, "Dad, I've been thinking. I want to visit Grandma's grave. I never really said goodbye properly." I nodded quietly. It had been years since he last visited her resting place. "She'd like that," I said softly. The next morning, we drove back to the town where our old house once stood. The place looked so different now. Someone had renovated it, painted it blue, and filled the garden with new flowers. Michael stood there silently, eyes distant. "It feels strange," he murmured. "So many memories here." I patted his shoulder. "Houses change, son. People too. But love? It stays." We continued to the cemetery, carrying a bouquet of her favorite white lilies. When we reached her grave, Michael knelt down, his voice trembling. "Hey, Mom. I know I disappointed you. I lost my way for a while. But Dad, he never gave up on me. And because of him, I found my heart again." I stood behind him, feeling the cool wind brushing against my face. It was as if she was there, listening, smiling somewhere beyond the clouds. Michael stayed quiet for a moment, then whispered, "Thank you for giving me this second chance." After we left the cemetery, we stopped by a small diner we used to visit when he was little. The waitress recognized me right away. "Haven't seen you in years," she said cheerfully. "And this must be your boy. He looks just like you." Michael laughed awkwardly. "I hope that's a good thing." She winked. "If you've got his heart, then yeah, it's a great thing." We both smiled at that. Back at the beach house that night, Michael sat by the fire pit, staring into the flames. "You know, Dad," he said slowly, "I've been offered a big position at the company again. They want me back, but I'm not sure if I want that life anymore." I raised an eyebrow. "Why not?" He shrugged. "Because this, helping people, being useful in a way that matters, this feels real. For the first time, I feel like I'm doing something Mom would be proud of." I smiled and nodded. "That's your decision, son. But remember, success isn't about the size of your paycheck. It's about the peace in your heart." He nodded slowly, absorbing every word. Then he asked something I didn't expect. "Dad, when you made that call to sell the house, did you know it would lead to all this?" I chuckled. "No, son, I didn't have a plan. I just knew I needed to find meaning again. Sometimes life rewards courage in ways we can't predict." He leaned back, watching the stars appear above the ocean. "I'm glad you did it, Dad. I'm glad you didn't give up on me." I felt my throat tighten. I never could. "You're my son. That means something." We sat there for a long time in silence, just the sound of waves and the crackling of fire filling the air. And though I didn't say it out loud, in my heart, I thanked life for giving me a second chance to be not just a father, but a friend to my son. Around us, the night deepened, the stars shimmered brighter, and somewhere far away,
A storm began to form. Unseen, quiet, but powerful. Little did we know, that storm would soon test everything we had rebuilt, every bond we had mended, every promise we made to each other. Because peace never lasts forever, and fate wasn't quite done with us yet.
The next morning, the air felt different. A heavy silence lingered in the wind, as if the world was holding its breath. Michael was on the phone early, his voice tense as he paced around the porch. I watched him from the kitchen window, his brow furrowed, the calm smile he'd worn these past weeks gone. "What's wrong, son?" I asked when he finally hung up. He hesitated, rubbing his temples. "It's the foundation, Dad. There's a problem. The accountant says a large amount of the funds are missing." My heart sank. "Missing? How?" He shook his head. "I don't know yet. Someone might have hacked into the account, or maybe someone from the team. It's bad." I felt a familiar ache in my chest, the same kind that comes when something you've built starts to crumble. I put down my coffee cup and said quietly, "Then we fix it, Michael. Like everything else, we fix it." He nodded, but I could see fear in his eyes. That day we drove into town to meet the accountant, an older woman named Nancy, who had been helping us from the start. She looked pale, her hands shaking, as she showed us the numbers. "It started 2 weeks ago," she said. "Transfers to an offshore account we didn't authorize. I tried to stop it, but by the time I caught it, the money was gone." Michael clenched his fists. "How much?" She hesitated. "Almost $400,000. The words hit him like a punch. He turned away, his jaw tight. "We worked so hard for this," he whispered. "All those families depending on us." I placed a hand on his shoulder. "Money can come and go, son, but we can't lose hope. Not now." He nodded slowly, but I could tell he was breaking inside. That night, he barely spoke. He just sat by the ocean, staring at the waves crashing endlessly against the rocks. I joined him, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. "You know," I said softly, "life has a way of testing us when we start doing something good. It's like fate asking if we really mean it." He sighed. "I do mean it, Dad, but I don't know if I'm strong enough to fight this again." I smiled faintly. "You are. Strength isn't about winning. It's about refusing to quit." For a moment, he just looked at me, his eyes wet with tears, then nodded silently. The next morning, he was up before sunrise, already making calls to the bank, to the police, to anyone who could help. He worked nonstop for days, his determination returning stronger than ever. And slowly, as the investigation went on, clues began to surface. Emails, bank trails, unusual logins, all leading to one name. A name neither of us expected. It was someone close, someone who had volunteered with us from the beginning, someone we trusted. I could see the betrayal etched into Michael's face when he read the report. "I let them in," he said bitterly. "I trusted them." "Trust isn't weakness," I told him quietly. "It's what makes us human. Don't let one person's greed change who you are." He nodded, but the light in his eyes had dimmed a little. That night, a storm rolled in over the ocean. Thunder rumbled across the sky, and rain lashed against the windows. Michael stood outside in the downpour, his clothes soaked, his fists clenched. I went out to him, holding an umbrella. He didn't look at me when he said, "Dad, what if this is all my fault? What if I wasn't ready for this?" I stepped closer, putting the umbrella over his head. "Then you'll learn, son. That's what life is, failing, learning, and standing again."
He looked up at me through the rain, his eyes shining with something raw, a mix of pain and resolve. "I won't let them destroy what we built. I'll make it right." And at that moment, I saw the man he was meant to be, the man his mother always believed he could become. As the thunder roared above us and the storm raged on, I felt something change inside me, too. This wasn't just Michael's test anymore. It was ours. And I had a feeling the hardest part of our journey was still ahead, because sometimes storms don't just wash things away, they reveal what's been hidden beneath all along.
The next day, the rain finally stopped, but the world still felt heavy, as if the clouds had left their weight behind. Michael barely slept all night. I could hear him typing, calling, checking records over and over. His determination had sharpened into something fierce. "Dad," he said in the morning, eyes red but alive, "I think I know who did it." He turned the laptop toward me, and there it was, a name I recognized instantly, one that made my stomach twist. It was Evan, a man who had volunteered with us from the very beginning. He was polite, charming, always first to arrive and last to leave. He'd been like a son to me in some ways, especially in those years when Michael and I were distant. Michael's voice trembled. He had access to the accounts. He handled donations while I was traveling for that conference. He transferred the money using my credentials. I could hear the anger beneath his words. Deep and controlled, but dangerous, like a storm waiting to break. "What do you want to do?" I asked quietly. He clenched his jaw. "I want to confront him." I hesitated but nodded. I knew Michael needed this. We found Evan 2 days later at a small cafe on the outskirts of town. He looked startled when we walked in, but quickly tried to smile. "Hey guys, didn't expect to see you here." Michael didn't smile. "Cut the act, Evan. We know about the money." Evan froze for a second, then forced a laugh. "What are you talking about?" $400,000, Michael said coldly. "Gone. Moved into an offshore account under a shell company that leads straight to your name." The color drained from Evan's face. He stammered, "Michael, I can explain," but my son slammed his hand on the table, his voice sharp. "Don't. Everyone trusted you. You said you believed in this mission. You stood beside me while I talked about helping veterans and families, and the whole time you were stealing from them." People in the cafe started looking over. I placed my hand on Michael's arm to steady him. Evan's eyes darted between us, his voice barely audible. "I needed the money. My wife, she's sick. I didn't know what else to do." Michael stared at him, his anger fading into disbelief. "You think that makes it right?" Evan shook his head, tears forming. "No, it doesn't. I was going to pay it back, I swear." I could see truth in his eyes, but also weakness, the kind that ruins good men when they choose the wrong path. "We'll let the authorities handle this," I said quietly. "You made your choice, Evan." He lowered his head, ashamed, as we walked out of the cafe. The silence between Michael and me on the drive back was thick. He stared out the window, his voice low. "I almost feel sorry for him, Dad." "That's because you have compassion. That's strength, not weakness." He nodded slowly, but I could tell the betrayal still burned deep. That night he stood by the shore again, watching the dark waves crash. "You know what's strange?" he said softly. "Even after losing the money, after being betrayed, I still believe in what we're doing. Maybe even more now." I smiled. "That's how you know it's real, when your purpose survives the pain." He turned toward me, his face illuminated by the moonlight. "You know what, Dad? I want to rebuild, bigger than before. And this time, we'll protect it better. I won't let good people suffer because of one man's greed." I felt pride swelling in my chest. "Then we start again, son, one brick at a time." Over the next weeks, Michael worked harder than ever. He spoke to donors, shared the truth openly, and refused to hide the mistake. People respected that.
Instead of losing support, the foundation began to gain more. Every interview, Michael spoke with honesty, admitting what happened but focusing on hope. And slowly, the tide began to turn again. But deep inside, I sensed something stirring. Evan's story didn't feel complete. There were unanswered questions. How he learned to access those offshore systems, and how the transfers were timed perfectly when Michael was away. Someone else had helped him. Someone smarter, hidden in the shadows. Michael didn't see it yet, but I could feel it, like a cold wind on my neck. The real danger hadn't passed. It was only beginning. And before long, that hidden hand would reach out again, this time not just for money, but for revenge.
It started quietly, like a whisper carried by the wind. At first, we didn't notice the signs. An email that wouldn't send, a bank alert that made no sense, a stranger parked too long across the street. But deep down, I felt it. Something was wrong. Michael brushed it off at first. "Dad, we've already handled the worst," he said, smiling as he sorted papers for the Foundation's next event. "The world's finally giving us a break." But I couldn't shake the unease. One night, I woke to the faint glow of the computer screen in the living room. Michael was asleep on the couch, but the screen showed lines of code running fast, too fast to be normal. I moved closer, and before I could touch the keyboard, the screen went black completely. I stood there for a long moment, listening to the waves crashing outside. Then a soft ding echoed from my phone. A new message. Unknown number. It read, "You should have left it alone." The words made my blood run cold. I didn't wake Michael right away. Instead, I sat there watching the horizon slowly brighten with dawn. When he finally stirred, I handed him the phone. He frowned, reading the text. "You think it's Evan?" "I don't know," I said quietly. "But whoever it is, they're not done." Within days, strange things began happening. The Foundation's website was hacked again, this time with a message across the homepage: "Truth comes at a price." Donors began receiving fake emails, our accounts got flagged for suspicious activity, and reporters started calling asking about rumors of fraud. Michael's shoulders grew heavier every day. "They're trying to destroy us," he muttered as he slammed his laptop shut. "Dad, this isn't random. Someone's orchestrating it." "Then we find them. Together." We contacted the authorities again, but the investigation moved slowly. To protect what remained, we shut down all online operations temporarily. Michael started working late nights, checking every file, calling every partner. But the more he dug, the darker it got. He found encrypted messages buried in the system, files labeled with dates from months before Evan was even hired. Someone had planned this from the beginning. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was personal, old, buried, waiting to rise. And whoever was behind it wasn't just after money or reputation. They were after Michael. Now the real fight had begun. The next few days were a blur of tension and silence. Michael tried to stay calm, but I could see the fear behind his eyes. He checked the locks twice every night, kept his phone close, even slept on the couch near the front door. As for me, I pretended to stay relaxed, but my mind was spinning, trying to connect the pieces. Evan, the hacked accounts, the threats, some shadow from the past that refused to die. On the third night, as rain tapped softly on the windows, Michael's phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. This time the message wasn't words. It was a photo. A blurry image of our beach house, taken from outside. The lights inside were clearly visible. Me in the kitchen, Michael sitting by the desk.
It was taken that very moment. Michael's face went pale. "They're watching us right now," he whispered. He rushed outside but saw nothing but darkness and sea mist. The sound of the waves was loud, almost violent now. He came back in, breathing hard. "Dad, this isn't random harassment. They know where we live. They know everything." I tried to steady my voice. "Then we stop reacting with fear. We think." I took the note from before out of the drawer and set it on the table. "You took what was mine," I read aloud. "What if this isn't about the foundation at all?" Michael frowned. "What do you mean?" I looked at him slowly. "What if it's about me?" He stared, confused. "You?" I nodded. "Years ago, before you were born, I helped a friend with a real estate deal. It went bad. He lost money, lost his family, blamed me, though it wasn't my fault. He threatened me once, saying one day I'd understand what losing everything feels like." Michael stared in disbelief. "You think this is him?" "I don't know, but the words sound familiar." We sat in silence as the rain grew heavier. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed outside, metal hitting wood. Michael jumped up and ran to the window. "The shed door!" he shouted. We both grabbed flashlights and stepped out into the storm. The wind whipped our faces as we reached the small storage shed behind the house. The door was swinging open, its lock snapped clean off. Michael shone the light inside, but everything looked untouched, except for one thing: an old box sitting in the corner, one that hadn't been there before. It was wet from the rain, a plain brown box with our address written in black marker. No postage, no name. I felt my stomach drop. "Don't touch it," I said quickly. But Michael was already crouching down, inspecting it. "It's not ticking," he said, trying to joke, but his voice was tight. We carried it carefully inside and set it on the table. Michael got a knife and sliced it open. Inside was a stack of photos. Old photos. From decades ago. Pictures of me, of your mother, of our old home. And mixed between them were recent photos. Me at the grocery store. Evan speaking at the foundation event. Even us walking on the beach. Someone had been following us for months. There was also a letter on yellowed paper, handwritten in the same neat style as the note. It read, "40 years ago, you ruined my life. You took everything. Now I'll take what's left of yours." Michael's voice shook. "Dad, whoever this is, he's serious." I nodded slowly, feeling the chill deep in my bones. "Yes, son, and he's close. Very close." That night we didn't sleep. We locked every door, turned off every light, and sat together waiting for the dawn. But in the quiet hours before sunrise, as the world outside went still again, I saw something in the window reflection, a shadow moving behind us just for a second, then gone. And I knew this was no longer about revenge from the past. This was the beginning of something much darker.
Michael didn't say a word for a long time after reading that letter. His hands were shaking, his jaw tight, his eyes darting between the photos and me. I could feel the fear and confusion building inside him. He wanted to ask, but part of him didn't want to know. I took a deep breath and sat down, my voice low and steady. His name was Richard Hale. We were business partners once, long before you were born. We bought land, developed homes, and made good money. But one day he took a deal behind my back, a deal with loan sharks. It collapsed. The investors blamed me because I signed part of the paperwork to help him. His company fell apart. He lost everything, and he disappeared. I never heard from him again. Michael's eyes widened. "And now he's back?" I nodded slowly. "Looks like it." He rubbed his face, frustrated. "Dad, why didn't you ever tell me about this?"
Because some mistakes are better buried, I said quietly, until they come digging themselves out. That night, we decided not to wait anymore. We called Detective Harris, the same officer who'd handled the Foundation case before, and showed him everything. The photos, the notes, the box. He frowned deeply. "This isn't random harassment," he said. "This is planned, deliberate. Whoever's doing this knows how to stay hidden. But if this is Richard Hale, we'll find him." He placed 2 patrol cars near the property and set up security cameras around the beach house. For the first time in days, I felt a small sense of safety, but it didn't last. Long after midnight, the cameras caught movement. Someone walking by the shore, a tall figure in a dark coat, watching from a distance. The image was too grainy to identify, but the feeling was clear. He was testing us. The next morning, Michael found something buried in the sand near the porch. A silver key and a note tied to it. "One last chance to make it right. Meet me where it all began." My chest tightened instantly. The words hit me like a punch. Where it all began meant the old property, the site of our first project, the one Richard lost all those years ago. It was 2 hours inland, a place long abandoned. I wanted to ignore it, but I knew he wouldn't stop until I faced him. Michael insisted on going with me. "You're not doing this alone," he said. We drove out early, following the old coastal road until the asphalt gave way to gravel. The place was ghostly now, the remnants of houses never finished, weeds growing through cracked concrete slabs. We parked near the old foundation stone, half buried in dirt. "He's here," Michael whispered. A soft crunch sounded behind us. We turned, and there he was. Richard Hale. Time had changed him. Gray hair, long beard, eyes sunken but burning with fury. He held nothing but an old walking stick, yet his presence was sharp, like a blade. "You finally came," he said, voice raspy. 40 years too late." I took a step forward. "Richard, you destroyed yourself. You made your choices." He laughed bitterly. "And you walked away clean, like the hero you pretend to be?" "I tried to help you. You refused." He moved closer, his voice rising. "You ruined me. My wife left. My son died in debt because of you. And now you live happily by the ocean while I rot." Michael stepped in front of me. "Stop blaming him. You destroyed your own life." Richard's eyes flicked to Michael, then softened for just a moment. "Your son. He looks like mine did, once." He sighed, then reached into his coat. I froze. But instead of a weapon, he pulled out a folded envelope. "This," he said, "was supposed to go to you years ago, a confession letter clearing your name. But I never sent it, because I wanted you to suffer first." He tossed it at my feet. "Now you know what I felt." He turned to walk away, but Michael ran after him. "Wait, you don't have to do this. You can still make it right." Richard stopped, shoulders shaking in the cold wind. "It's too late for right." He whispered and kept walking toward the empty road. I wanted to stop him, but something in his voice told me he'd already made peace with his pain. Later, when the police searched the area, they found Richard's old car near the cliffside. Empty. He was gone. No trace, no body, just his walking stick lying by the rocks. It felt like an ending without closure. The next few weeks were quiet again. Michael and I rebuilt the foundation systems, restored its name, and started fresh. Donations poured back in. People believed in us again. But for me, the real victory wasn't the success. It was seeing my son become the man I always hoped he'd be. Strong, compassionate, wise. One evening, as we watched the sunset from the porch, Michael said softly, "Do you think Richard found peace?" I stared at the horizon, where the sea met the sky and the wind whispered like old memories. "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe peace isn't something you find. It's something you give." He nodded, smiling faintly. Then he turned to me. "You know, Dad, when you sold that house and disappeared, I thought you gave up on life, but now I realize you were just starting it over." I smiled, feeling the warmth of pride and love in my chest. Sometimes you have to lose everything to see what really matters. The sun sank lower, the waves shimmered gold, and for the first time in a long time, I felt no fear, no regret, only peace. Michael stood beside me, strong and sure, and I knew whatever storms came next, we'd face them together. Because in the end, this wasn't a story about revenge or loss. It was about redemption, for both father and son. And as the tide rolled in, carrying away the last footprints on the sand, I finally whispered to the wind, "You were wrong, Richard. I didn't ruin your life. I just learned how to rebuild mine."